episode number 265 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is Perla Piekutowski. Perla has over 14 years of experience in the ART field, including operations, case management, and others, as well as executive leadership. She is known for her first-class level of service to intended parents and surrogates. Perla and her husband also needed assistance growing their family through IVF. Her journey to have her own children has gifted Perla with empathy and appreciation for intended parents. Between her professional and personal experiences, Perla serves everyone she meets with enthusiasm and compassion for their goals while also understanding their trials. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome to the podcast, Perla.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. I'd love for you to share. I know you have your own personal journey with ART and fertility journey yourself, which I would love for you to share with the listeners. And also the surrogacy company that you had just started. We'd love to talk about that and how that can help a lot of people going through the journey. So yeah, I would love for you to share your story.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about my own fertility journey and also what we do to help others that are trying to have a baby. So I started working in this field, in surrogacy, before I started trying to conceive my own children. But I feel that it gave me more perspective to understand what other people go through. You know, it all started when my husband and I tried to conceive naturally for a few years, and things were not working out for us. So being in this industry, I understood that something may be wrong and that I need to do testing. So we moved on to do some testing. Everything seemed to be fine. So we started trying to conceive with the help of a doctor and artificial insemination. That didn't work. We tried 4 times, despite the doctor believing that it was going to work quite quickly for us. So we had to move on to in vitro fertilization. And it is then when we learned that I had poor egg quality. And this is what was causing the fact that I wasn't getting pregnant. So we had to do several cycles in order to conceive. We were transferring 3 embryos each time. And finally, I got pregnant with my baby boy. He was the 9th embryo.
Oh, wow.
So it took a while. Yes. So, you know, I call him my miracle boy because it took so many tries, so many embryos to get there. But, you know, having gone through that long journey, I thought it was going to take a really long time to get pregnant again. And I had frozen embryos left. So when he was 2, I said, okay, well, it's going to take a few years. So let's go ahead and try again. And we attempted IVF again with frozen embryos. And then our girl took on the first try. So you just never know.
You'd never know. You never know.
You never know. So we do have an 11-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl for a fertility journey. At the same time, you know, I was helping couples and intended parents. We called people that want to have a baby through surrogacy. We call them intended parents. So at the same time, we were helping intended parents try to have a family of their own. I feel that experience, that personal experience, really gave me an appreciation and perspective of the roller coaster of emotions. Because when you're going through it and you have failed cycles, time after time, you start, you know, thinking that this may never happen for you.
Yeah.
And so it was a way for me to put myself in their shoes when they were doing this process. Fortunately, you know, we have been able to help countless couples achieve their dream of a family through surrogacy. And that's what I do today. And I'm so passionate about it.
I bet. I mean, listen, you know, it's such an amazing option and opportunity for a lot of people who are having issues with transfers or they have really bad endometriosis sometimes in certain cases. I mean, there's so many different variables that can come up, or same-sex couples. There's so many variables. So in talking about that, for other people who are trying to conceive and they're trying to figure out, like, is surrogacy for me? At what point do you usually get couples to decide? What point do you usually see in the fertility journey, besides obviously same-sex couples where they need a surrogate? What usually gets people to realize that that would be their best option?
It depends on their circumstances, but for example, women or men who have been waiting for their Prince Charming or their Princess Charming, and they didn't find that person to create a family with, and are starting to realize, I don't want to get to an age where I'm just introducing a new baby to my life. I would like to do this by myself since I have not found that right partner. So there are people that make this decision on their own. And if a woman is over the age of 50, it's usually recommended to use a surrogate. As you mentioned, same-sex couples, they need the help of a woman to have a baby. And when it comes to heterosexual couples, it's a little bit more complex. There needs to be a medical necessity to do this process. So these women usually have to go through all means possible to try to get to a pregnancy before they ask for the help of a surrogate. And so, they usually would try assisted reproduction first. They may try to do IVF. They may try to do artificial insemination before they come to us to do a surrogacy journey. You also have women who have gone through, they have a medical condition that they know that pregnancy would be risky for them, whether it is because they cannot, so maybe they are taking medication that is not compatible with a pregnancy, or maybe for them to carry their own pregnancy can put their life at risk and the baby's life at risk. So whatever the reason may be, surrogacy is a really good option to create somebody's family. Now, there are different ways to create a family via surrogacy. There are women that are using their own genetics to create their family, their own eggs. And there are others that need to use the help of an egg donor because they're unable to create healthy embryos, for example. So as you can see, there is a wide range of reasons to use surrogacy, but I can tell you for the majority of people, surrogacy is not the first choice. They usually come to us when they have already exhausted all other options and they have been unsuccessful before.
Right. So you had mentioned that in order to try surrogacy, that a woman would have to prove, or a couple would have to prove that the woman cannot carry or has gone through some medical conditions.
They need to be endorsed by a fertility physician.
Okay.
There are states where you don't need to have a medical necessity. Our stand is, we're going to have to assess the situation because we're asking another woman to put her own life at risk. And so we really need to know that there is a good reason to ask that woman to carry somebody else's baby. There is social surrogacy, what's called social surrogacy, where women may use surrogacy because, their carrying a pregnancy would have a big impact on their ability to continue to do their job. So there are situations like that. We don't necessarily move forward with those journeys. Those are exceptions to the rule for us.
Got it. And so what are some of the things that you guys do from your perspective to choose a surrogate? What are the things really that come into play when putting all the pieces together? Because it really is so many different things. Couples come in, they have to choose a surrogate. Do they interview them? How do they do that?
I love the question because there are so many different ways to do this in our program. So first of all, the women who want to be surrogates need to meet a certain criteria in order to be approved and be able to move forward with a process like this. Just to give you a general idea, most women are within the 21 years old and 42 years old. most of them, they have their own children. That's one of the requirements. They have their own children and have to be raising at least one of them. They are legal residents of the United States to be able to do it in the United States. They could be single or married, but if they are single, they need to have a strong family support or a strong support system. They cannot have more than 5 deliveries. So when they come to us, if they've had 5 deliveries, this would be the 6th one. And the same with C-sections, no more than 2 C-sections, because the 3rd one would be the last one. And it's because we're trying to minimize the risks for both the intended parents and the surrogate and also the baby. So we need to have those requirements in place. They need to be financially stable. The surrogates are usually middle-class women that are doing this not because of the money necessarily, but because of their desire to help somebody have a baby. When they look at their babies and they look at their children, they say, wow, I had such easy pregnancies and this is such a joy for me to have my children. I would like to be able to give this to somebody else in need. So if the surrogates meet the minimum requirements, they have to go through a screening process before they can even do an embryo transfer. Things that we do, to give you a few examples, they have to complete a criminal background check. They have to do a mental health interview and assessment with an independent mental health professional. They have to go to the fertility doctor that is working with the couple that she's going to be carrying their baby for. And she has to go through ultrasounds. They have to do lab testing. And so there is a number of steps that the surrogates go through before they can get to the medical side of things.
Right. And I was just curious, why is it that there is a requirement for them to have become a mother or have given birth to their child before? Is it to see that they can give birth and carry well?
Yeah, you got it just right. There are 2 reasons. One is because you need to have that track record when it comes to fertility, to know how she carries a pregnancy, whether she can deliver a baby full term, if she has any complications, and also on the emotional aspect of things. She has never had her own baby before, so how can she know that she can deliver for somebody else? So both aspects is a psychological aspect and is also the fertility history.
Okay, understood. And so it's fascinating because you think about all the different things. What about logistics? If they're far away, how does that work? Because they're not necessarily exactly where you guys are, or are they?
I love that question too. There is surrogacy all over the world. The legal protections that you get in the United States and the medical care does not compare. In fact, it's very risky to do surrogacy in other countries. So we're going to focus on surrogacy in the United States. We work with surrogates in those states where the intended parents have the legal protections to finalize the parental rights. And that means put both of their names in the birth certificate of their baby. So the surrogates live in those states. That's where we recruit surrogates, but the intended parents can come from anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say, for example, that we have intended parents from Spain and a surrogate in Maryland, where our agency is based. The way that it works is that the intended parents would have a fertility clinic in the United States. So they have this fertility clinic most of the times before they have a surrogate. So the fertility clinic may be in another state, let's say Connecticut, okay? So if the intended parents are in Spain, the surrogate is in Maryland, the fertility clinic is in Connecticut, the laws that apply to the process are the laws of the state where the surrogate lives and delivers the baby, okay? She would have to travel to the fertility clinic to get medically screened and for the embryo transfer, but then everything else she can do in the state where she lives. And also the intended parents will have to go to the clinic to do their own testing and, to do an egg retrieval if needed to create the embryos. There are other ways to do this, but this is the most common. And so even though the surrogate has to travel to the fertility clinic, She can do most of the process at home. She can go to her own OBGYN during the pregnancy, and then she would deliver at the hospital that is closest to her.
Do you ever have people from outside of the country where they would travel there and then come back here?
The surrogates?
Yes.
The surrogates traveling out, not at this time, but I have seen that throughout my career. I have been doing this for over 14 years, and I have seen surrogates travel to other countries for the embryo transfer. Logistically, it is way more complicated and involved. I have seen that when intended parents already created embryos in their own country and they didn't want to yet have to use another doctor in the United States to transfer those embryos. So I have seen cases, but very, very randomly. It's not something that is as common.
Yeah. And also, how does the couple pick the surrogate? What's the process of that?
The way that most of us work is using an escrow company. So once a surrogate is approved and there is a match, and earlier you had mentioned that the intended parents choose the surrogate, and I just wanted to let you know that they choose each other.
Okay.
So the surrogate will get the profile of the couple. The surrogate gets the profile of the couple. She says, this is the couple I want to help. And then the couple will receive her profile, and we will let them know she has chosen to help you. And then they would say, okay, she's perfect. I would like to proceed. And so once all of that is in place, she goes to the medical screening appointment, she's approved, then there are contracts. And the contract is going to outline the financial agreement. And so the intended parents will be sending the fees that are listed in this contract to an escrow company, and the escrow company will manage all of those payments per the contract. So the contract says the surrogate receives an embryo transfer fee, for example, then the escrow company will send all of those payments. And typically in a surrogacy process, you want to have the account fully funded before the embryo transfer happens, because you want to provide the surrogate and the professionals working in the case that peace of mind and those protections that the bills are going to get paid on time.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess I would imagine it's all cash, because it's not going to be something that insurance covers. It barely covers sometimes ART treatments. So are there ways, because people will still really want to have a baby and do anything in their power to have that goal accomplished, if their only option is surrogacy, how are ways around financials, or are there ways to make it a little easier if they're not able to put it all up front?
Yes, and that's the big question. There are lending institutions available. However, nobody funds the entire journey for the intended parents. So some of them rely on, trust accounts or help from their family, fundraising. There are grants out there. There are not a lot, but there are grants available. But, the intended parents are using most of the intended parents are using their own funds that they have been saving for a really long time to be able to do a process like this.
Yeah, for sure. But it is typically that people would have to pay really like in full right from the beginning.
Yes. At the beginning, they're sending the funds in installments, but the account needs to be fully funded before a pregnancy can happen.
And what happens if there's a miscarriage? I mean, I hate to say this, but it does happen.
It is reality, right? It is reality. Just like in any regular pregnancy, there is a risk of miscarriage. And it happens, and we've seen it, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
When that happens, what we do is the fertility physician is going to assess the potential reasons for that miscarriage. And typically, they will try again with the same surrogate.
Mm-hmm.
They may do additional testing on the surrogate for the next try, but typically the surrogates are trying 2 to 3 times with the same couple before the fertility physician recommends to try someone else, because it is part of pregnancy. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is anything wrong with the surrogate. It may mean that the protocol needs to be changed, or it may mean that the window of implantation is different for her than what was estimated. So there are different reasons that there could be a miscarriage. So the doctors typically will try again with the same surrogate before they make any other recommendations.
I mean, I'm sure they're going to still have to pay the surrogate, but is it worked around to some extent for the second time?
So it depends on who the intended parents are using as their agency for the process. There are different models. You have the a la carte model. And the a la carte model is that anything that goes wrong, the intended parents are paying for. So if the surrogate has to start over again with another cycle and they need to pay medications, travel, monitoring, all of that, the intended parents are paying out of pocket. Our model is different. We offer a fixed fee. And in a fixed fee type model, we have two packages. In one of the packages, if there is another embryo transfer that needs to happen, we have a flat fee for that second embryo transfer. And then in our other package is unlimited. So the financial burden is not on the intended parents, but it is on the agency. So it depends on the type of model the agency uses, but I am a big fan of fixed fees. And in fact, when I was given the opportunity to start this agency from inception, that was really important to me, that we offer fixed fee packages so that the intended parents can really focus their energies on building a relationship with their surrogate and enjoying the pregnancy versus being worried about the financial aspects of the process from beginning to end.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because a lot of different agencies work differently. That's something to keep in mind. People think, and the same thing happens with fertility clinics too. Every fertility clinic operates different. They have different labs. There's so many different intricacies that happen. What are some of the things that you would say people should consider before looking into a surrogacy? Like, what things should they look at for companies? What questions should they ask? And so on.
Great question. So surrogacy can be overwhelming. And with that comes how long the process takes, the timeline, right? So I think some things to consider is, first of all, what is the company's track record and expertise in the industry? For us, for example, even though we just started this division of the family of companies have been around for a really long time. So I think that's really important to know. We are part of a family of companies that have a good reputation in this industry. So I would start there, right? The reputation of the agency and the reputation of the people that work for the agency. I think that's really important. It is also important to see what their model is. How do they work? How do they do things? Having done this for so long, I really do think that screening a surrogate prior to a match is important. It is important for a number of reasons. First, from all the applicants that you get applications on a daily basis. You're getting hundreds of applications. From all of those kind women that want to become surrogates, only about 10% would be approved. So it is a very small percentage of all of the applicants that will be approved. So when you work with agencies that are first matching and then screening, you have that risk of being matched with a woman that is 90% that are not going to get approved. And so you have to start over. And if on top of that, that agency has an a la carte model, then you're paying to screen each and every single one of those women until you get to the 10%, right? So I think it's important to ask questions about the screening that is done before a match happens, because you are taking a big risk of being matched with someone that won't be approved, having to start over when you've already spent money and you've already invested, you're emotionally invested with this woman, and you've also invested time. And so for us, we actually do the screening before the matching to a certain extent, of course, because the fertility clinic is ultimately going to give the last word of whether that woman can move forward or not. But we're doing background checks. We're doing the mental health professional evaluation. We even do lab testing so that we can send all of that to the fertility clinic before the surrogate even travels. And they can tell us, she looks good, she can come in person, or they can say, you know what, I don't think this is a good candidate. And so you're saving a lot of time that way. So I think looking at the screening, how much is done before a match is really, really important. The reputation of the company, but also the people that work for that company. And then I think the financial aspects, we just discussed that. I think that's very important. Are you more inclined to do an a la carte type package, knowing that it is really difficult to give you a range of how much you're going to pay, what's going to be your bottom line if things go wrong, because you're going to be liable for that? Or do you prefer a fixed fee package where most things are covered and you have more predictability and peace of mind? So that's something else that I recommend that intended parents look at when they are going to work with a surrogacy agency. And lastly, but most importantly, we started with the timeline. When do you want to have your baby? Do you want to have your baby 3 years from now, 2 years from now, tomorrow, because you've been waiting for so long? Typically, a surrogacy journey can take about 15 months. It's a very long process. Not only do you have to wait to be matched, but then the surrogate has to go to get medically screened, then you have to do contracts, then her body needs to get ready for an embryo transfer. The first embryo transfer may take or not take, then you may need to do it again. So considering the 15-month timeline, they need to look backwards and see when they need to start. So I want to have a baby by December 2024. So that they need to count backwards. So right now, Michelle, there is a wide range of wait times for surrogates through different surrogacy agencies. Not only do they have different models, I match you first, screen later, but also you have agencies that are taking 1 year to 2 years to match with a surrogate.
Oh, wow.
So we need to think about when do the intended parents are hoping to have a baby and go from there. If they want to have a baby as soon as possible, the recommendation is work with an agency that has a short wait time for a surrogate. I am really proud to say that our wait time has average 4 months for the majority of our couples. It also depends on the intended parent's requirements, right? Because let's say an intended parent wants to only work in one state in the United States. They have family in there, and it's easy for them to come pick up their baby to that state. And so the match time, the wait time for a match is going to extend until you have the right person in that state who wants to help them and they like her. If they are open to criteria based on what we spoke about, the requirements that we spoke about earlier, then their match time is going to be under 4 months. But the more criteria they add to their wish list, the longer it will take. So I think timeline is really important, and asking the agencies, how long am I going to be waiting to be presented with a potential surrogate is one of the key questions when they are considering surrogacy.
Yeah,
there's so much to think about.
One. Oh, for sure. And then, how does it work when there are doctor's visits? Can couples fly out to meet, to be there? Or how does that whole journey look for people?
Absolutely. So the preference is always participate in your baby's pregnancy, right? Go support your surrogate, go with her to doctor's appointment. That's not always possible because it is not always that a surrogate and the intended parents live in the same state and close to each other. That's very rare. So for international intended parents, for example, they're not able to come to all the appointments. So in certain instances, the OBGYNs are going to be open to doing FaceTime, for example, to show the baby on the screen and talk to the intended parents. If that is not possible, our recommendation is that the intended parents come for the milestone appointments. For example, the anatomy scan at 20 weeks of pregnancy, between week 19 and 21, when they measure, they count the fingers and the toes and they measure all the little organs. That's a really exciting ultrasound. So, we tell intended parents, if you can, plan to come for that ultrasound. And surrogates are open to allowing the intended parents to be in the room because they want them to participate in the pregnancy. They want them to be excited about their baby, and they bond over those experiences too. So we encourage those visits, but they don't always happen because we have intended parents from all over the world.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The whole process is very interesting and it's fascinating. And honestly, between ART and IVF and surrogacy, it's a real miracle, technological miracle that we have with our advancements to help couples have their child. Or it really is incredible to see that there are options out there. Not all of them are simple, obviously. I mean, there's many different things to consider, but it's just nice for people to know. And this is one of the reasons why I was happy to have you on, is because I just want people to understand the process. It is important to know that you have options. They may not be the option for you specifically, but it's important to understand what is entailed in the whole process. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, I love, when we talk to intended parents, I love telling them there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It may maybe it doesn't look that way right now because you have gone through so much loss to get here.
Yeah.
But trust me, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Not all journeys go well. Not all journeys go well, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a happy ending. You may have a miscarriage and the doctor is going to suggest something else, or you may need to work with a different surrogate. But if you keep trying, you will end up with a baby. It's just a matter of how.
Correct.
How would you need to switch to egg donation?
Yes.
There are options out there. And if you're open and willing, then we can help make this happen for you.
Yeah, it's definitely the how. And there's so many different ways to do it. And it's not about the right way. It's the right way for you. There is no one right way. It has to be right for you. And I've had a previous podcast before. She was an intuitive, Nancy Weiss, and she heard about embryo donor and something within her lit up. Like she was like, that's for me. And it was just really interesting how she kind of found her journey. And that was specifically for her. And I think that that's what it is. I have many different guests on. There's many different stories, many different ways. And it's important to really listen to all of them, even if it doesn't feel like it applies to you. Listen, because you never know. You just never know. So it's just important to kind of keep in the back of your mind that here's another option. And it's a really great conversation. And thank you so much for answering all the questions that I had so nicely and so thoroughly. And if people wanted to learn more about Fairfax Surrogacy, how can they reach you guys?
They can email us at info@fairfaxsurrogacy.com, or they can go to our website, fairfaxsurrogacy.com. We would be happy to talk to you, whether you are someone who is trying to have a baby and don't know where to start, don't even know if surrogacy is a good choice for you. We're happy to talk to you. And also for any women out there, you've had your family, you don't want to have any more children, and you want to make a difference in this world, please come to us. We can give you information. Even if you're not sure you want to do this, we're happy to answer your questions and help guide you with what this could look like for you.
Awesome. Well, Perla, it was such a pleasure talking to you, and I thank you so much for coming on.
The pleasure is mine, Michelle. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and it has been a pleasure talking to you today.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.